Welcome to Joy Hour. Today I'm in the studio with a family friend, Susan Jeffries. We've known each other over 25 years and very excited to be in the studio here today with you. Got a beautiful backdrop of Seattle, Washington, which is where we would have met 25 years ago. And you've been a big part of my family, my kids, so many things through the years. You've been at our home hundreds, if not thousands of times, cleaning, taking care of the kids, praying over me, praying over my wife. Thank you so much for the prayer you've put into the Lyman family and so many others. Today is special for myself, and I'm sure for you, as we'll go over different things of your life. But again, just what I know of you and see of you is that you have given a lot of hours and a lot of time to many, many other families through the years. And, working at the church, I've seen you show up early when nobody's watching, stay late when nobody's watching. And it's so important to mention that, in that I feel challenged and inspired when I even talk about that or think about that. Is that's what we should be, as a servant of Jesus, a servant to others, right? Serve, love. And so I just see that in you as I look at you as a prayer warrior. I look at you as a servant of Jesus, a servant to others. So many families, again, I know you've impacted far beyond what you've seen, times that you've been there for the pastor's wife at our home church, but yes, really any family, whether they need a ride, whether they need food, whether they need cleaning at their home. You've just always had a humble spirit of serving others. And so I'm so thankful for that. And I know a little bit about your career path, but not all the details. But you've worked in public education for over 30 years.
Yes.
A couple times where that changed.
Yes.
But if you want to start with just a little bit about what you're currently doing, and then, of course, dive deep into who is and who was Susan.
Yeah, who was?
Yeah, that's what the audience probably really wants to hear. What's your story?
What's my story?
Let's get real quick.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I will get into my testimony, but yes, I have served a lot of families in the church community, and I have a love for cleaning for some reason, and I have a love for children. I really do have a love for children, and I think it's what drove me, my own children, into public education, and kind of to watch over them, basically, to kind of make sure that I had my eye on them. And it was started out as volunteer and then turned into a job, which became sub and then eventually into the school system. But even more than that, than public education, teaching my children, or teaching children in general, the Word of God, like in a Sunday school classroom. And I remember after the testimony that I'm speaking of, when I got myself back into church, I went right into teaching in a Sunday school class, and it was your son and a very dear family friend of mine's, their son, and a whole bunch of all these kids that now are grown, that just seeing the impact when they were 2 and 3, and then what they're doing now and how they're still living for God. It's amazing to see how, as you impact children and you keep on speaking into their lives in some way, and how they grow up, the direction that they take. And it inspired me that I could do that in public school, because there's a lot of kids out there that have never heard about Jesus or never heard the Word of God. And though I can't really speak to them a lot, I can impact them in another way, just by my example and just being around them and navigating like the right direction and things like that. So that has been a great passion of mine, just to impact kids and to just speak into their lives and to listen to them and to have fun. And I'm kind of a kid myself anyway. So I just kind of stay in the kid zone a lot, which sometimes I need to be an adult, but I like the kid zone. It's fun.
We like the kid side of you too. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. But so as far as my testimony, or what I have not really shared with people a lot, and I'll say this to start out with, that when I started getting back into church after I walked away, I got the sense that I shouldn't talk about it because it was not a place I should have been. And so that was probably 2007 or 2008 when I started making my way out of the things that I was going through. And I'm just now sharing it. So 2007 to now, it's been a long time that I've not said anything, which I was just confused about, like how to speak up about it.
Right.
But so going back to what had happened, to begin with, I already was kind of set up as an adolescent in my family circle to feel as though I didn't really amount to anything, that my voice wasn't heard. I was kind of in the shadows, a second born to a family of six. My dad had, my sister and I were from a second marriage. Then he remarried again, 2 more children, brother, sister. And then he married again and 2 more younger sisters. Even with all of that, I still was the one in the shadows. My dad was a musician. He was very musician-minded, very, I think, secular music, I would say, very selfish. You know, musicians, artists, they seem very selfish because they're absorbed with their art and their talent. And he was like that, but very good at what he did. And he saw potential in my sister, did not see it in me from my view. And, you know, our perspective is our experience.
Right.
So I don't know what he really thought, but my perspective was that I did not amount to very much. And my sister did. And so she was, and I love what she's developed into. I love, she's became an opera singer, you know, and that was her profession for years. Amazing. She was involved in Phantom of the Opera, just very, very, very talented and very, very well-rounded. She has a good head on her shoulders. But that was, you know, what I felt like I was competing with and trying to vie for my father's attention. My mother, he took us every time that there was a divorce. So we never, at 4, that relationship with my mom kind of ended. And we still would see her, and she would still be in our lives, but that mother figure wasn't there any longer. Like most mother-daughters would have that good relationship. We didn't have that. So it was mostly my dad. But feeling in the shadows, feeling insignificant, feeling that I just didn't really amount to anything. And so I think that birthed a thought in my mind that I wasn't much of anything. And so when you don't feel like you belong anywhere, or when you don't feel like you are a part of anything, or that you don't measure up, you kind of struggle with who you are and where you're going to go. And so I didn't really have a plan for my life. I didn't know where I was going to go, didn't know what I was going to do. So I just kind of grew up however. And that kind of boiled over to a relationship. So when I chose who I eventually married, I didn't choose based on criteria. I chose based on looks and like how I felt. And I married into a relationship with an abusive husband. And I didn't know it at first, but as time went on, it became very apparent that he was not, he didn't manage his emotions in a positive way. He took it out on us. And it didn't start out that way, but it ended up, the cycle of abuse starts out with, they teach you when you go to get help, or when you're going to counseling for that kind of thing, they teach you the cycle of abuse, how it starts out with an action against you, and then there's an apology, and there's hearts and candies and sorries, and then the hearts and candies and sorries become fewer, and the lashing out and the hurt becomes larger, and pretty soon there isn't anymore. And I remember the biggest thing that the biggest phrase that was ever said to me was that he was the king and I was nothing. And it was always that nothing. And so the nothing continued to drive into my mind that I was nothing. And that drove also into my mind that if I was going to make decisions, there was no way out. So I developed this other mindset that every decision I made was a decision I would have to accept, and that I couldn't change it. And so that mindset became a phrase: you've made your bed, now you have to lie in it. And that was what I told myself over and over again every time that there was an incident, a situation. I would just continue to say, you made your bed, now you have to lie in it. You have to figure this out for yourself. You chose this is what you get. And so all of my upbringing brought me to a place where that was my mindset, that I couldn't change it. So I was in a you can't change this mindset. And when I started going to church, thank God he began working on my heart and showing me that his love can change anything.
Amen.
But it also takes work. You can't just walk into the doors of a church, a counseling session, a group, and sit there and listen and then walk away and don't do anything about it.
Right. So good.
So I began growing, and I began developing my relationship with God and teaching my children. And before I got out of the relationship with my husband, because we got help and we got out, but while we were still there, he didn't want to have anything to do with it. So it was me and my kids. And so once I made the decision to leave, because I didn't see another way out. It started getting worse. We made the plan and we got out of the situation. And I finally felt like I had the opportunity to have all the right things. That, I picked the wrong, or I thought that I picked the wrong man. But of course, I think everything happens for a reason, and I have my children, and I'm grateful that I have the children I have. I don't think it was a mistake. I think every opportunity, every situation that we go through is an opportunity to learn something and to grow from that thing that you learn. And so they are reminders that God is good and that he doesn't make any mistakes, and that even though the situation can be destitute, there's always something better down the road. And there's always something to look forward to. There's always something positive. So moving forward to after we left, I still had the mindset, because I didn't really get any counseling, I think I had 2 sessions of counseling with 2 different counselors. I didn't get my kids into any counseling. I didn't do any work. I just was thankful that I was out of the situation, and nobody was talking about it. And that's why right now, here today, and the things that are happening, that have happened in these last 2, 3, 4 years or so, is amazing, because I see more and more people talking about the things that you're not supposed to talk about.
Come on,
you
right.
know. And so, as I began thinking about what I was going to do next, my mindset was still, because I hadn't had any counseling. My mindset was still not clear on on what, like, where I should be thinking, like where are you going now? Where are you going to go now? Now that your husband doesn't want to be with you again, you've got your kids now. Now you're moving forward single, parent of very young children. You have the church's support. And so you have like a clean slate, basically. You have to deal with the ugliness of divorce, but now you have a clean slate. And so my first thought was, yay, I can marry a godly man now. And that's all that I thought about. That was like the only thing on my mind, was that God was giving me a new chance. And there was no work in what had just happened. And so, pausing in the middle of that, if you're in a situation where you are going through something and you think, you have the answers, stop, think about some kind of counseling, some kind of a way to talk to somebody, connect with somebody, because you have to have a network in order to be able to navigate through the decisions that you're going to make. And so I didn't do any of that. And what ended up happening was that this woman came along who was in our apartment complex when we moved, and everybody was talking about that they thought that she was gay, that she was a lesbian. And I kept telling my kids, no, we don't judge people like that. Just like let it go, leave it alone. This person will, if we're meant to be friends with this person, we'll meet them and we'll, we're friends with people. We be kind to people. And a lot of the whole complex was just turned upside down about it, that there was a woman that was a lesbian in this apartment complex. And I didn't really care about it. I was just kind of in my euphoria, I guess you would say, of trying to figure my life out and waiting for that man and all that stuff. And it was kind of like a side road. And we came home from church one day, and we all let our hair down, and we were just walking around the apartment complex in the cool of the Sunday afternoon. And this woman was sitting on one of the benches near the cabana. And she called over to us and said, "Hey, your hair's so long," and just started a conversation. Long story short, we all just started talking and became friends. And then I got to share with her Jesus and where we went to church. And I thought, wow, I am going to win this person. I don't know what they're going through, what she's going through. I'm going to win her. What ended up happening was, because of my mindset and because that I wasn't focused on waiting for God and doing the work that I needed to do to be able to be even ready to be married again. That whole relationship caught me off guard, and I ended up in a relationship with this woman. Instead of winning her, that spirit won over me. And anything that I ever experience in my life, I never look at it like I don't throw them in the trash. I don't say, good riddance, this situation is gone. Thank God I'm over with it. I kind of examine it and try to take out what I can from it. And so after the fact, I had done that. But what pulled me into it was that same old mindset that when I got caught up and I realized that this person was kind of like a guy, this person said she cared about me. Nobody's cared about me like this. She related to me so much. There was so much that we had in common that I all of a sudden began to believe that this was the road. And then my whole mindset changed from what I thought God had for me to this is what God had for me. And I kept on grappling back and forth between, well, is it right to be this way or not be this way? And so I settled for, well, now you're in this. You've made your bed. Now you have to lie in it.
Right.
And I went back to that same old mindset that this is the only thing that was left and I can't change it. And so I ended up in that relationship for, I would say like 5.5, maybe 6 years. Turned my family upside down. It almost was worse than being with their dad because it was it went, completely against what society says. And I was trapped. I was trapped in believing that I was going to find love in that. And I lost track of my relationship with God. Although God never left me. And it's surprising because when I had, I would even have lesbians say, hey, will you pray for me? Like because for some reason, it still showed that I was a Christian, I guess, even in the middle of that. But I would have people asking me, would you pray for me? And I'm thinking, what? How could I pray for you? I'm like completely in the middle of this mess.
Right.
But that whole road, that whole mindset, there were many occasions where I would go out with a group of people and this new significant other, and I realized there was no difference in the way that she was, keep hitting the microphone, the way that she was in the way that a guy was. Because I think when you let yourself go to that type of a situation, like she was all in. She was the guy. She was a guy. She did all the guy things, except she would argue that she wasn't a guy, which was very contradictory. But she would act like a guy. She would womanize. She would cheat. She drank. She did drugs. I remember getting a contact high from her crystal meth that she was doing. And she was so scared because she had gotten me high with crystal meth because it was in her skin. And I didn't even know that she even did drugs. But that was like the whole entire relationship was drugs, alcohol, and cheating, constant cheating. And a lot of people would tell me, but it's okay, you don't have to cry over her because that wasn't a real relationship. Oh, yes, it was. When you love, you love. Yeah. And so I had a lot of, afterwards, I had a lot of trouble trying to differentiate from whether I really loved this person or not. And it was a real relationship. There was real love there because I put my love into something that was not right, but I still put all of my heart and soul into it. And so it took a lot to come back out of that. But while in that situation, while in that lifestyle, I began to see the breakdown and why maybe, and this is not the only reason, this might not be the only thing that that women would choose to go into a homosexual relationship, or that guys would go into a homosexual relationship, but this is the part that I saw. And there was a lot of conversations where people would open up to me. They would drink, and then I know from past experience that when you start taking a drink, you start telling the truth. Everything comes out. And so they would begin to talk about how they felt and what happened to them. And over again, it was when my uncle molested, or that one guy that one night, or just over and over again, it was a sexual assault. And even from my own partner before we ended up becoming, coming together, she told me that a relative had done that with her. And she wanted to prove something. She wanted to prove, I guess the mindset was, and I've told people this before, I'm going to show men that I can be a better man than they were to me. So that mindset of, I can do you better. And so they just would give themselves up to, that lifestyle. But I know better. I know that it's a spirit. Homosexuality is a spirit. It's an inviting spirit. And it invited me in, and through this person, and showed me a love that it was so real, but not, because it's not reality. But it was so real to me and spoke to every avenue in the moment of what I needed at the time. And it's because I took my eyes off of God, and I also didn't do anything with myself after a major trauma. And it's so important that when you go through something, you have to stop and you have to evaluate the situation, and you have to, or you should, nobody has to do anything, but it's very important to stop and evaluate and assess the damage and make a plan. Because when you don't plan like what you're going to do next, you can get caught up into anything. The first invitation for a drink, turns into a line, turns into another relationship, turns into all these other things. And, pretty soon down the road, you're even worse off than when you began. And that's basically the gist of what had happened, that I didn't make that plan, and I didn't safeguard what I had after coming out of a domestic violence, or after that relationship. And I don't take it, like I said, I don't throw it away, because the lessons I learned, my takeaway from that is that there are people out there hurting. There are people that think that they love like another person, and the only love that you're going to find that's going to be genuine is the love of God. How I ended up getting myself out of, or not getting myself, I think God pulled me out of this,
Right.
but towards the end of our relationship, when I knew that there was too much damage, and I hadn't quite yet believed that I was wrong, that I was in the wrong, in the wrong lane, basically. I hadn't believed that yet. I had a phone call from my mom, and we were not connected closely, like I said. We didn't have that relationship. But throughout my years, I would always say that I really didn't have a mom because I didn't have the relationship, and that was also another pain deep down inside my heart that I didn't deal with. So the in the shadows, insignificant, and then I also didn't have a mom that I could connect with. All those things. I did end up having a stepmom that was very close with me, but your bio mom that is alive and is everywhere, but you don't have that relationship with her. So I disconnected from that. And one day, probably about 6 months before I would break away from this homosexual relationship, I had a conversation with her, and she began talking to me about asking me how I was doing, and was telling her a little bit about how I felt, and I explained that it was weird that we were having a conversation because I never got to talk with her before, and I felt like she wasn't ever there, and I kind of got a little bit bold with her. And so she came back and she said, "I understand," which I didn't think that she would ever say something like that. I thought maybe she would be frustrated with me, or maybe hang up the phone or not want to talk. But she said she understood, and then she began telling me her testimony of like how she was raised. And the things that I heard her say made me feel like my life, that I had nothing on her, that she was brought up in this crazy life. And that, from that conversation, brought this realization that I don't have it bad. I don't have it so bad like other people. And it also brought me to, right before the conversation with her, I actually was very, very low, very like down in the dumps. And I had contemplated suicide, and I had had a whole bunch of pills sitting on the table. And I had my Bible there, which I didn't really put the Bible out, but it happened to be there that day. And I had been crying. And after all this happened, then my mom called me, and I answered the phone. But that was the day that I was just going to end things. I was going to take the pills. I was going to go to sleep. But I was a little bit afraid to do it. And I saw the pills and I saw the Bible. And I felt to pick up the Bible first. And so when I picked up the Bible, I gave God this, okay, God, I'm going to open the Bible I'm just going to open it up, and whatever happens, happens. And to this day, I can't find the Psalm, but it opened to a Psalm. I've been looking for it for years. And maybe it was a Psalm that God let me read that wasn't in the Bible. I don't know. It's possible. But I opened the Bible up and I began reading it. And everything that I read was talking about going to battle for me, fighting my battles for me, being there for me, that I wasn't alone, all of these things that I just kept reading. And I just started weeping and crying. And then I told God that I was sorry. I had repented. And after all of that, I had realized that what started this whole thing was me witnessing to this lady. And instead of me turning her around, she turned me around, or the situation turned me around. And then I began to grieve even further because she was no closer. I was worse off, and she was still in her situation. And so I began grieving for her soul because I had led her or allowed her to stay where she was at, and I hadn't made a difference in her life, basically. Then my mom called, and then God started working in my mind about, your situation is not grievous. Your life is not worth nothing. You're not insignificant. Everything that happens to us as we grow, like from a child to an adult, all those experiences, the people that are raising us also have experiences. And if they don't take care of their things, how are they going to take care of how are they going to help us? And so it just really broadened my understanding about the fact that I'm not insignificant. I'm not in the shadows. In fact, God chose me. And not only did he chose me, but he came to my rescue, like right before I didn't think that my life meant anything. And not only that from my own mother, who I don't have a relationship with, was able to show me that my life isn't in shambles. It isn't a wreck. I don't need to end it. That I actually have strength. And from that, those experiences, I realized that I needed to get up off my bed. I needed to throw those pills away, and I needed to start praying. And so I went, I had a closet, a big closet, and I went into the closet and I just began praying that God would restore me and that God would help me to rebuild what was broken down, and to help me to figure out where I went wrong. And the first place that he pointed to me was my perspective, that I thought that I didn't amount to anything. But God says otherwise. I'm wonderfully made.
Right.
He's made me for a purpose. I am my testimony and the direction that I go, my steps are ordered. I might take a step to the left, but maybe it's an experience that I'm going to take away so that I can help somebody else, that I can speak into somebody else's life. Sexual abuse is devastating. It takes innocence away from people.
Right.
And if you don't have somebody that speaks into your life and loves on you, then you're going to go find it. And the enemy's very ready to help you find it in all the wrong places. And so I learned to have a better understanding for those that are out there living that lifestyle, and to be judgeless, I guess I could say, and just to love on them. The first commandment is, to have no other God before God, love him with all our mind, soul, strength. And then the second commandment, the Bible says, is like the first, to love your neighbor as yourself. And love God, love people. Those are the two things that are going to move anybody. And so to just be there in situations, like before we started recording, we were talking about letting people just talk without interrupting them and without finishing their sentences or think you know what they're going to say next. Sometimes just letting people talk and get it out so you can hear what they have to say is gonna go so far in helping them. But I've never told this testimony to a large demographic, like I said, because I felt like I wasn't supposed to.
You're hearing it today on Joy Hour for the first time.
Yeah.
You've shared probably this much. I've known you for, like I said, 25 years, and I've heard little bits and pieces, but nothing like I've heard in the last half hour or so. And that's why I've been so quiet over here, is I'm just going, wow, look at what God can do with a life and with a person for a purpose. And I'm so glad you're using this already to reach so many people. Just briefly, and I'll go back to you here, but I remember during these years where you were absent from our community, was also the same years as my wife and I were youth pastors at the church. And so we would pick up your kids and bring them to and from youth events many, many times. And, from a distance that I didn't really know you like I do now, but, it broke my heart and thought, like, why is that going on? But, like, what do you do? How do you help a person? But I think what you said there was so spot on, is just love. Just love people. No matter what they're going through, love them. And I hope that that's what you remember from my family to yours during that time, because skipping ahead just 5-10 years ago, when I was going through my hard times, which everybody on this has probably heard my story already, but I had about 12 years of sexual problems, addiction problems, and you'll hear more about that later. But during that season of my life, you were there for us in a huge way. I mean, keeping our kids so many times, being at our home, being there to support my wife through those years that I was putting her through, miserable times of abuse and everything else. So it's interesting how we've shared life together through some major storms.
Yeah.
And I know I've always felt love from you. And I believe you'd say the same from our family to yours. But that's what it is, folks. It's just love, love, love. You don't understand. You don't see what it is that they're going through or why. You've got a family member that's struggling with addiction and you just want to fix it. You've got a family member struggling with sexual addiction or getting off track in any one of these ways. And a lot of times all you can do is love and pray and love and pray, but don't ever stop loving them. But carrying on, one of the questions I had there for you is what happened after your mom called and that big moment there that you just shared? What was the next steps that you took to kind of get from this road of normal life for 5 or 6 years that you had to the road you're on now?
Well, after speaking to my mom, God began prompting me to write a letter to my mom.
Okay.
And the prompting was, pour out your heart in this letter. So I poured out my heart in the letter. And then from there, it was, write a letter to your father. Pour out your heart to your father. All the things and that's a whole another testimony, because I have a lot of them. I have I should say, taking a break in the middle of this and say that I feel like my entire life, I don't even think I should be here, but just my entire life is testimony after testimony of things that happened to me. And then I don't even know why I'm sitting here breathing today and in my right mind. So there's just a lot more, but in this situation. So I wrote the letter to my dad, and then God said, hold on to them for a while. And so I held on to them for a while. And then I just kind of moved on through life and picked up pieces after, got my kids back because they were with other people while I was actually my son was with me. One of the major things that happened at the tail end of this relationship, we were living together, and she was gone during the time that I had the pills and had the conversation with my mom. She had been gone for a couple of weeks, but we were living in the same house, and my son was with us. And then when she came back and we were making decisions to go ahead and break up and go our separate ways, just before that, when I knew that I was probably going to make a decision to break away, my son came home from school one day, and I was sitting on the sofa, she was sitting on the sofa, and he said, Mom, something weird happened at school today. He said, I think I'm gay. And this motherly thing inside of me said, oh, no, you're not. That's strike one. And I felt that I was beginning to realize this recruiting spirit. It's recruiting. And then I had a conversation with my daughter who said something similar about the situation. And then that was strike number 2. And so I'm like, this is recruiting. You need to get out of this. And so those things that I was seeing happening to my children, it just brought me back to this mindset of what is the, I can't remember what it is that we say our, not our legacy, but our generational things, like something that is generational. We can carry that to the next generation.
Referred to as generational curses usually.
Generational curses, yeah. So I had found out while in this relationship that my father had those tendencies as well. And so I was recognizing, I started thinking generational. If he, and now me, and then now my children, and just something in me was like, oh no, not this, not my kids. And that began driving me away from the whole thing. So fast forward to I got out of the situation. We went our separate ways. I had a lot of, like a usual breakup, depression and things like that Still wasn't getting any help yet.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of relying on myself, you know. Hadn't decided to go back to church yet, but because I was back with my children, I had made a commitment that I would start going to church, but I just wasn't there yet. And then when your wife started picking up my daughters for music practice, then things started moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And then God said, open up that letter from your mom. And so I opened up the letter. I was out of the situation. I was now with my kids,
Mm-hmm.
like this prime position of not in that situation anymore, not at church yet, but now like all the distractions were gone. And so I was by myself. All the kids were at church. I open up the first letter. I start reading it. I'm bawling and bawling and crying. Therapy. God's giving me spiritual therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, now burn this letter. I was like, what? Because I'm not going to send it to my mom. It was all the hatred and anger and frustration and things that I had in my heart.
It was from you to her.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I burned it. And oh my word,
Mm-hmm.
with the smoke went up all of the things that I had felt.
Mm-hmm.
And it just lifted the anger, the frustration, confusion off of my life, off of my mind. And then he said, days went by, and a couple weeks, I still wasn't in church. The kids were still being picked up, and I hadn't made the commitment to go back yet, but I was, making my way. And then it was another Sunday, and he said, get that letter from your dad. So I get that letter, and I know where it's going.
Mm-hmm.
And so I open it up. I start reading it. All the hurt comes back. All the healing starts coming in. I'm bawling. I'm crying. I know what to do. I burn it.
Yeah.
All that burden lifts off of me. And now I don't have all the hurt and the anger and the pain of my mom.
Yeah.
And all of the hurt and damage, and you're in the shadows. You don't amount to anything. All of that gone.
Gone. Yeah.
And I just thought, wow.
Mm-hmm.
And it was God alone. I can't credit anybody but God, because there wasn't anybody speaking into my life, really.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that it was a God thing. It was God alone. And I know that when you have hurt and you sit down and you write a letter and you let all of that hurt out in the letter, but you don't give it to the person, you just say everything.
Mm-hmm.
You're putting it down on paper. You're acknowledging all these things inside of you. And then you just burn it and destroy it, and you let all those things go. It was so therapeutic. It was so healing.
Yeah.
And then I said, I'm going back to church. And so from that point forward, God just began working in me. And I would often question, why did I go through that? But when I see what he's doing in my life now, and the change in my heart and my mind that were made after the fact, I don't think some people would say I'd trade that. I wouldn't trade it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade it, because I am in such a different mindset now.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't surprise me that there's apostolic moral purity now, and there's joy hour, and there's all these new things coming up, and there's counseling within the church, and there's people talking about things that we don't talk about.
Right.
Because I think an oppression is coming off of people, and the opportunity to speak those things that we're not supposed to speak, because the enemy doesn't want to hear it. He wants you to stay oppressed. He wants you to stay down in the depths. He wants you to stay in the wrong place, because he doesn't want to see you prosper. He doesn't want to see you. He doesn't want you to live. And so to that I say, sorry,
Yeah.
get behind me. I am going to live, and I now am going to tell my testimony. And after today, I've opened up the can. It's open. And so I accept all the amazing things that will come from this, because there are people that need help, and there are people that need to know that you don't have to go it alone. You don't have to think that you're by yourself. And if you are alone, if you feel like there's nobody on your side, you do have somebody on your side. Reach out to, there's Celebrate Recovery groups, there's watch the Joy Hour show. You can glean lots of information from that. But a local church, even local churches have something. But don't isolate. Don't sit alone, thinking that there's nobody there. There's a community out there that are probably, so many of them have the same kind of testimony. Like, everybody's going through something. Right. So don't think that you're alone.
You know, a lot of times I do these podcasts and I have a lot of things to say. I don't really have much to add to this. This is just, you've said it so well today, and I'm so thankful for you being open. Again, this is the goal of Joy Hour show, is to open up and to normalize conversations that a lot of people have never had, never think that they will have, because of what? Embarrassment, because of shame, because of, oh, I should have never done that. Well, guess what? You did, and it happened, but there is purpose. Out of the pain comes a purpose, and this is the launching point, I think, for you, impacting thousands and thousands of people, not just on the topics you shared, but on many other topics that we didn't have time to get into today. But, you know, that's what I think it's all about, is being able to be vocal, know that it's not about us, it's about him. And he did step in and do the miraculous in our life. We're not done yet. We still have struggles. And we have just a few more minutes if you want to share, number one, what's one tool that you go to right away, say when any sort of temptation or depression or anything starts to come into your life? Just share briefly. What I like to hear is, what have we been through? How do we get through it? What do we still go through? What tools do we have and go to help us through it on a challenging moment or a challenging day?
So when I have the challenges, the first tool that I would use is to evaluate, like, what it is that's happening, like what just happened, and try to figure out, so now that this thing has happened, like, what's involved in this thing, evaluate what's going on, so that I can have a proper perspective going forward, like, what am I going to do with this thing that's happened? And so my first thing is to pause. That's the first thing I would do. When maybe I might not understand what's happening, and then all of a sudden, like, something's, like, there's temptation, or there's an issue or a situation, and I feel like I'm just going to start going back into woe is me. Then I stop and I pause. Why am I saying woe is me? And then I begin to realize that it's because, like, in situations, other people are going to be who they are. So what's going on with them? So then, not only pausing to evaluate, but what's happening on the other side of the fence, or what's this other situation? Right. What's involved in that? And then taking kind of a mental list of what's going on the other side of the fence. Trying to see not everything like me, but what's happening with this other person or this other situation. So that, like I said, I have proper perspective of it. And then a lot of times, once I do that, it doesn't even go very far. I don't find myself unraveling and falling apart, because I kind of stopped it in its tracks. And so just just the mindset of stopping
Yeah.
and just pausing to see like what's going on. And then I always pray, and I always ask God to show me, the situation, or show me what I can do, or show me how to handle it. And every single time, without fail, I'm able to handle it, and I'm able to look at the situation through a different lens and allow grace, mercy, just like God, allowed me going through the things that I've gone through.
Yeah.
And even to give myself grace and mercy, like, whoa, slow down, give yourself grace, give yourself mercy. So it's pausing, it's getting the right perspective, putting yourself in the other person's shoes or the other situation, thinking about that, and always going to God and asking him for help, because he is always ready and available to guide and direct us in the right direction. And I think the last thing that I would say is waiting.
Yeah.
Just
That's
waiting.
the hardest part. Yeah.
Waiting.
Be still and know that I am God.
Yes. Yep.
As we close out here, and I'm sure we'll do more of these. There's so many questions I do have for you, but we're running out of this hour here. Grow closer to God, folks. There is another level for all of us to understand an intimacy with God. And so find that time to be still. Find that time to hold your Bible. Find that time to sit outside and just hear the birds, hear the wind, and hear God speak into your life, because so many things that Susan shared today I can relate to, in that I didn't pause. I didn't allow God to be my father. I didn't allow God to be my comforter. And I'm sure you could say the same, as you finally have got to the point where, yes, a husband would be fabulous and God's going to bring the right one at the right time.
Right.
But until then, you're continuing to grow closer to God, and he is meeting your needs. In our weakness, he is strong. And I've just seen such a growth and a maturity in you in even the last couple of years, that I think he is definitely getting you ready to impact a lot of other people. And I'm so glad you shared on the Joy Hour show today your testimony, your story, a glimpse of it. If you do want to reach out, you know how, Only Source, and share this with others, watch.osn.tv. And this is meant to encourage and inspire others to reach out and ask for help, ask for guidance, number one, from God, and number two, from a community of people that have real talk. So thankful to do this show today with you.
Well, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it, and I bet it's going to impact a lot of people.
Amen. And we'll do it again.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye.